The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. We appreciate each and every one. We got a great show lined up tonight. And if you do have any questions, you can take and private chat them to either H. Foister or Ceiling Cat, and we will get those answered for you. And if you're listening from somewhere else around the world and you do have questions, you can take and send an email to the paranormalview@gmail.com, and we will get those questions and get them answered for you. Let's see. We have tonight, we do have with us tonight Barbara Duncan.
I am here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Jeff is still not able to be here. He is on the East Coast tonight with his family, so wishing him a great time there. And hopefully soon he'll be able to be back with us. We all do miss him. But we got a great guest tonight, and because there's so much to it, and I'm not sure exactly how long she's going to be able to be on with us, I'm going to let Barbara go ahead and introduce our guest.
Okay, folks, tonight we have as a guest Marie D. Jones as a returning guest. She's been on the show a lot, and we love her. She is a best-selling author, screenwriter, producer, researcher, public speaker. She is optioning a number of her screenplays for her own production company called Where's Lucy Productions, and we could talk about that too. She's also has several film and television properties optioned with Bright Frontier Films and MDR Entertainment. She's the author of over 15 nonfiction books on cutting-edge science, the paranormal, conspiracies, ancient knowledge, and unknown mysteries. Her books include Science, How New Discoveries in Quantum Physics and the New Science May Explain the Existence and Paranormal Phenomena, 2013, The End of Days, Our New Beginning, my favorite, Supervolcano, Destiny versus Choice, the Scientific and Spiritual Evidence Beyond Fate and Free Will, another, she just writes these wonderful stories. The Grid, exploring the the hidden infrastructure of reality, The Resonance Key. Oh my goodness, she has many. These books are from the future, A Journey Through Portals, Relativity, Wormholes, and Other Adventures in Time Travel, as well as The Deja Vu versus Enigma, A Journey Through the Anomalies of the Mind, Memory and Time, and we can go on and on with 1111 Time Prompt Phenomenon. It's just amazing how many books she writes. Her newest are, however, Demons, Devils, and Dark Angels, A History, and The Power of Archetypes. And tonight, she also has her new book on the haunting stories. Ghost hauntings.
Yeah, celebrity ghosts and notorious hauntings.
Yes. Please welcome to the show, Marie D. Jones.
Well, hello there.
Well, we didn't even get into the fact that you're also a trained disaster response preparedness in CERT through FEMA. You're also a licensed ham radio operator, which I think is just fascinating, and you're also into horses.
Do you really have time to do all these things?
Well,
I want to see your schedule book.
The good thing is that, like, with writing, it's really good because I get up early, I get to work early. I used to write just constantly, but I'm now really being a good girl and giving myself evenings off and weekends. I usually write one day, but I can do it whenever I want, and I've gotten to be so fast at it. And, I have my rhythm down, I guess you could say. So I do have a lot of time to do a lot of other things because of all the books and stuff I've written. I feel like I've kind of trained myself to be able to, like, I don't get writer's block ever. I sit down, I can pump out several thousand words, and, I'm never like stuck or anything. So I'm really lucky in that respect.
Wow.
But I mean, I wish I had more time to write more books.
Well, now, what is it that you do with the film? Are you just like a producer, or have you acted in some of the movies?
Oh, God, you do not want to see me act. No, you don't want to see me act or sing ever. So what happened? So when I was young, I actually started writing. I wrote fiction. I wrote short stories, and I wanted to be a novelist. And when I got into my 20s, I lived in Los Angeles for a long time, and I got into writing screenplays, and I really enjoyed it. And I, had an agent, and I would go to pitch meetings and this and that. And not a whole lot came of it, probably, which was a good thing because I was so young. I probably would have sold my soul to the devil, but I still was writing fiction. And then later, it was much later, that I just kind of got the bug to try nonfiction. And I wrote one book just for fun called Looking for God in All the Wrong Places. And I got it published. I got a publisher. I got my agent, Lisa Hagen, who's still my agent today. This was a long time ago. And it sold maybe 5 copies. But like I said, it got me my agent. And Lisa got me my first big book deal, and that was for Science, Pscience. And from there, it just kind of took off. And I kind of felt like, well, this is really weird because most people will only write in one format. Either they just write novels, or they just write screenplays, or they just write nonfiction. And I can do all 3. And I think it's because I started so young and I never really questioned that I couldn't do it. And I've had so much practice with all 3. And so a couple of years ago, I have a manager and an agent for my screenplays and all that stuff. And my manager said, you really should start thinking about producing. So she gave me some projects that, are being pitched where I would be attached on as a producer. And then I signed some options on some material that I had where I'm attached to produce. But that's kind of out of my control until they actually sell. So in the meantime, I went and decided I wanted to make some independent films. And I made 2 short films where I wrote and executive produced and co-produced with a couple of other producers. And next year, for 2020, I should be doing my first feature film. So it just kind of all happened,
Congratulations.
So how did you move over into the paranormal?
Now so when I was really young, I loved telling and writing ghost stories and horror stories. I'm talking, 5, 6, 7 years old. And I was a UFO nut. Ever since I was really, really young, I was really obsessed with UFOs. And so was my dad. And we had a neighbor that lived across the street who was a total UFO nut. And so, I grew up, like, we'd go to the library back in those days, and I'd always want to get books on ghosts and UFOs and Bigfoot, and I just loved all that. And it stuck with me all through my life, so that when it got time to write nonfiction, and Lisa and I were deciding, what would I like to try to sell first? Science was the very first thing that we got out there, because I loved the idea that maybe consciousness and quantum physics and the whole idea of parallel universes and other levels of reality could have something to do with the paranormal. And then from there, I did write some books that are not about the paranormal, but most of them either are directly or kind of indirectly. Like Destiny versus Choice, I don't know if you would call that paranormal, but I do have a lot in that book about different types of divination systems that can predict the future, like astrology and numerology and what have you. So there was always kind of a connection. But that's just that's something that I've been really interested in and fascinated by on a personal level. And even now with my fiction and some of the screenplays that I write, the content is paranormal because it's, as a writer, I feel like either you write what fascinates you or don't bother doing it because it's really hard work. You don't want to write about something that you're not really excited and fascinated by.
Well, I also find it interesting, and I'm sure it comes from your father or inspired by your father, and that is your scientific approach to
yes.
your nonfiction books, which I like because it doesn't base it on conjecture. You're actually putting fact and data.
Yeah, see, I'm lucky. So my mom is real creative. She gave me all the creative stuff, the writing, creativity. And my dad was a geophysicist, and I got my love, from very early on, again, my love of science from my dad. When I was little, I was kind of a tomboy, and I had a geology set, and, I had a animal tracking stuff, and I would always read books about science, whether it was astronomy or marine biology. That was such a huge passion for me. But I also was very much aware that there was an unseen side to things. And believe it or not, my dad agreed. And I loved that a scientist was open about, yeah, there seems to be all of this other stuff going on, but we just don't quite know how to explain it yet. And I always felt like there is a science to the paranormal, but we haven't quite mastered what that is yet. And it's so funny, a lot of people have a hard time with that. Oh, no, there's no science to it. Yeah, there is, because science, saying that there's a science to something really just means there's a way that it works. The science of something is describing and explaining the mechanisms behind it and how it works. And I always was really fascinated by that. But I did, I wrote other books like Super Volcano. I wrote with my dad. And my publisher asked me to write about the 2012 enigma of the end of days mythologies. And I really liked writing that book. So I've really been fortunate that the publishers that I work with have allowed me to write the paranormal. It's a very niche thing to write about, but also to branch out and write about other things, archetypes, what have you. I wrote a disaster manual on how to survive disasters. I've been really, really lucky.
That you haven't had a disaster, or?
I live in Southern California. And yeah, we do. I grew up in New York, so I grew up with rain, blizzards, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But yeah, I've lived in Southern California for a long time, and I've been through major, major earthquakes, terrifying, major wildfires. I've been, evacuated and blah, blah, blah. And that kind of drove me to want to get training because I was a single mom, and I wanted to know, well, shoot, if something happened, what do I do? What do I do with my son? And how do we get out and do this and do that? And so that book was really, really fun for me to write, because I felt like, oh, now I get to kind of give back to readers all the things that I've learned, which, I think are, no matter where you live, there are different big and small disasters and emergencies that we're going to have. from a bee sting to a blizzard. It could be something very small that people don't quite know how to deal with, or it could be those big ones that we hear about on the news or that happen to us, tornadoes and flooding. Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I know that when we start disaster drills, etc., that writers can bring in some really fascinating scenarios that you might not think about. And, you know, it's interesting that you can use that disaster training, but also as a background for some, I'm sure, incredible novels, or even just how to approach a natural disaster.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, don't you think people have a weird fascination with disaster movies? And, you know, I mean, people really love them. I'm older. I'm a little older, so I remember the Irwin Allen, like the Towering Inferno, and oh gosh, what was it? The Poseidon Adventure, and all those really cool disaster movies.
Oh yeah.
But, you know, it's sort of a way for us to live vicariously, to experience something that's really scary. But you get to do it on film. But the thing is I mean, they happen all the time in our real world. And I've, you know, a long time ago came to the awareness that I have two choices. Either I'm one of those people in a disaster that's helpless and hopeless and is going to cause somebody else trouble, you know, to have to come get me and take care of me, or I can be proactive and help and, you know, be part of the solution. And especially where I live, we have so many disasters between fires and earthquakes and flooding and things like that. Our first responders are tapped out and they need help. So, whenever something really bad happens, I tend to be one of those people that gets really calm and takes control, you know, after I panic for like 2 minutes. You know, I have that initial panic, but then I get really calm. But I love it. I'm fascinated by it. I actually, you know, I think, oh my gosh, if I wasn't writing and doing all this, I would love to go into some kind of disaster management. And I'm actually going to join the Sheriff's Academy, not next year, but the year after, and join their Search and Rescue Academy.
Ah.
I love Search and Rescue. It's a really intensive training. Mm-hmm. So I figure I'll spend all of 2020 getting in good physical shape to see if I could actually qualify.
If I had to do that, it would take probably longer than that for me.
Oh, yeah. You know, they have different, they say, yeah, well, there's a lot of desk work that you can do. I'm like, no, I want to get out there and I want to do the searches. I did a night search and rescue drill a couple of months ago that I don't know why I just came back from it thinking I have to do this. And, you know, people look at me like, are you weird? But it's just, I loved it. It was really like, it's kind of like working with the paranormal in that before we went out into the field to look for the clues that had been left for us, we had to go through this whole pre-training inside where everybody had to ask questions to get pieces of the puzzle as to who was missing and when they went missing and what they were wearing, et cetera, et cetera. It was almost like forensics. And I kind of really liked that. I think the paranormal has its own sort of forensics to it.
Well, yeah.
So it's kind of a whodunit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. We're always looking for clues and what can we piece together and what pieces don't fit. And unfortunately, you know, in the paranormal field, most of the pieces still seem to be missing, but I think we're getting a little closer.
Okay. Have you ever seen a ghost?
Oh my gosh. No. You know, honestly. And people go, oh, but you write about him. Isn't that kind of hypocritical? Or no.
It's not.
So,
you know, there's people who've been into it for years and ain't never actually seen one. So
I have never seen, in terms of seeing an apparition.
Right.
But I have experienced situations where I have felt the presence. I have felt the energy. I have felt something. I have been repelled or repulsed from certain locations because I later found out somebody was murdered there, or there had been, crime committed. And that's happened a lot. And I also have heard my name called. My father's father, my Poppy, who's just so beloved, my beloved Poppy, had a really unique nickname for me. And the rest of the family had a different nickname for me. So every now and then, even to this day, I will hear that nickname being called. And it's nothing where you could say, oh, I think I heard, but it was a car honking, whatever. It's just very distinct.
Wow.
So, but I've had situations where I've gone into houses or buildings and maybe gone into a room they wasn't supposed to, felt like I was going to throw up, or, get very dizzy, get very, just a feeling of foreboding. And I would find out later that something really awful happened there. Now, that's happened quite a bit. So in talking to other people, what I've come to realize is that there seems like some of us were more sensitive to perceiving paranormal phenomenon in different ways. So for me, it's sensitivity, energy sensitivity, if you want to call it that, feeling the vibes. Other people see things, other people hear things, other people smell things. I can be in a room with someone, like, for example, I was in the Queen Mary, and we were in the pool room, and, there's a whole lot of ghosts that allegedly haunt the Queen Mary. I didn't see nothing. I felt a couple of weird places, especially walking down the long, creepy hallway to my room. I definitely felt like, oh, this is kind of creepy. But there were people in the group that I was in that were saying, look, it's right there. Look, it's here. And it got me really thinking a lot about how much of us, how much we as the observer, how much do we have to do with what manifests? Some of us seem to be really, really more adept at seeing things, and others have blocks. What kind of blocks? Could be anything, something physiological.
Well, that old adage of the observer becomes part of the experiment, and I firmly believe that's true in the paranormal.
Yeah, and it's like, well, is it psychological? Is it that weird science part of me that just sort of subconsciously blocks things? Because I have to tell you guys, I am the biggest chicken, okay? I have to sleep with light on, like night lights. I cannot sleep in the dark. I'm terrified of the dark. If you tell me there's a ghost, I will run. I'm a big, giant chicken. But really, except when it comes to UFOs. Now, those I'm game, definitely game.
You want to see one.
But when it comes to ghosts, I'm like the first person, Horror movies I have a real hard time with because I end up having nightmares. I'm very suggestible, I guess you could say. But at the same time, I wouldn't mind, seeing a ghost if I were with a large group of people. If I'm alone, forget it.
Right.
But if I were with a group of people, I would feel, safer. And I really want to see it because I want to see with my own eyes. I want to see how it appears, what it looks like. Is it transparent? Do I feel my hair standing up? Is there static electricity? I want to be able to ask all those questions. And I've never been able to. I've always had to rely on the experiences of other people. Well, so that's very frustrating.
They say that I'm probably the same way, but when I'm going on an investigation, I'm always with someone, and they'll tell you, "Don't get between me and the door."
Oh, good. Okay, so it's not just me.
I got a question from the chat room already, and it's from Tabby. She wants to know, would you compare your theory of resonance and vibration to that of the stone tape theory?
Yeah. So The stone tape theory is all about imprinted energy and the idea that if something traumatic or highly emotional happens, say in a house or a cabin or a building, that some type of energy is retained within the building itself. How that relates to resonance is the fact that energy, everything is vibrational. And everything is different frequencies. So if you go into that building and you happen to be sensitive to the frequency or the vibration of that energy, you're going to experience the imprint. If you're not, you might not see it. And it very well could explain why, again, 6 people could go into a building that has a very, very haunted reputation, especially with imprinted ghosts, which literally are ghosts that act as if they're not aware that they're being observed. It's almost like a looped behavior.
Right.
They just do the same thing over and over, like walk across the room, and then they do it again later. So 6 people could go into that room. 4 people might say, oh, yeah, there it goes. Yep, there. Yep, I see it. And 2 people will say, I don't see a dang thing.
Yep.
And it's not because the other 4 are lying. I believe that there are physiological and environmental things going on that allow one person to tune into that resonant frequency or allow another person to not tune into it. And Larry Flaxman and I, we were so fascinated by this subject that we wrote a book called The Grid. And in The Grid, what we did is we wanted to look at all the possibilities of how our physiology, our bodies, our hormones, our brain chemicals, the food that we eat, the pharmaceuticals that we take, could all of this stuff be like some kind of weird, strange brew that aligns with what's going on in the environment, which could be the barometric pressure, the actual weather, precipitation, electromagnetic anomalies or activity, solar storms, what have you, to create the perfect scenario, like the perfect storm, to manifest paranormal phenomena. And Larry had actually done some experiments with his group, his investigative group, where they kind of tested that out a little, where they would have large groups of people and they would maybe tell them a false story about a location. And, maybe 7 out of 15 people would actually experience the false story that they were given. They just sort of synced into this energy, and maybe they've created it themselves. So there's all kinds of really cool, interesting questions that I think we need to be going more in that line of research of looking at resonance, looking at the vibrational frequencies between us and our environment. And when we get them into sync, we get to see things that are still there. We're just not aware of them. And how consciousness has a lot to do with that too. It's sort of locking your consciousness in, focusing on something that you don't normally see until you have a need to.
Wow.
And it's interesting too how, our brains are wired. And of course, if you think of linear time, that's probably a human concept.
Right.
And when you take humans out of the equation and we start dealing more with AI, and we start making a little bit more interaction with that, how AI is going to perceive reality.
Oh, that's kind of creepy to think about. Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But you know what? Speaking of the brain, so one of the things that I wrote about in a book called The Power of Archetypes is the RAS, the Reticular Activating System. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Anyway,
Yeah.
at the base of our skull, there's a cluster of nerves, and it's like a nerve group that helps us focus and helps us filter out unnecessary information so that we can function and go through our day and, not be so scatterbrained, although it works a lot better for some people than others. But basically what that has to do with the paranormal is that if your RAS, if you can somehow get it to start looking for what to focus on, you can really shift your perception. And an example of that would be all of a sudden you wake up one day and you say, I would really love to buy a red little Mercedes convertible. And then you go outside and you see them everywhere. It's like, what the heck? I didn't think they were so popular. Now I don't want one anymore. Well, they've always been there, but you didn't have a need for your brain, for your filter to focus on that information until you decided you wanted one. Then now you're focused, you're honed in on it, you're going to see it everywhere. So if most of us go about our day-to-day business and we're not really looking for ghosts, they could be floating around in front of our faces 24/7. But until we have a need to actually get our RAS to focus in on it, maybe that's why we're not seeing them. And maybe some people are better at focusing that part of the brain than others. So those are the things that I think I find really fascinating.
Well, it is true. And because, you could think one day I need a new pair of sneakers, and then all of a sudden you're starting to see ads, you're starting to see other people's sneakers, because that's where your focus is. I assume that's what advertisers
you didn't care
do.
before. I mean, you didn't care that people were wearing those same sneakers. You probably looked and saw them a million times and it didn't even register.
Right.
So it's like, oh my gosh, what are we filtering out? Because, like I said, we need to be filtering in I got to get up, I got to make coffee, I got to go to work, I got to get the kids off to school. And so our daily survival, and the RAS actually was developed as a part of our survival mechanism, the primitive brain, because we needed something that would allow us to focus on where food was, where shelter was, where predators were, so we could avoid those places. But now it's kind of interesting to think, there's this part of my brain that will filter out or filter in what I ask it to, or what I focus on, what I intend, what I think about. I think it has a lot to do with the law of attraction teachings too.
Yeah. So do you think that may be part of the idea as to why children see ghosts more, because they haven't filtered out, or they don't have as many filters?
I think that, and the fact that I think they operate until about the age of 7. I believe they operate in alpha brain wave state. And also, I think it's theta. I could be wrong there. So not only are they operating in more open and accessible brainwave states, because they don't have to hone in on or focus on the same things that we do as adults, but they're not being told what to focus on. They're very open. I think, their consciousness is evolving, and they have not yet, here's the big one for all us grown-ups, they haven't yet programmed into their subconscious, this stuff doesn't exist. That's impossible. There's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as UFOs. So their subconscious is still pretty pure until probably about, adolescence. But yeah, definitely some of the things kids say are shocking. They're creepy. Like my son used to say things like, they're here. Mom, I can see them. I hope you're not going to be worried about me if I have to go back with them. I mean, he would say all kinds of weird stuff. He had so many. Now, I had invisible friends when I was little. My kid had a bunch of them. And he would talk to them like they were right there. And I always thought, you know what? Maybe they are. I mean, when I was little, I insisted that mine was. So yeah, kids, they'll talk about other lifetimes. They'll say things that just come out of left field, and it's like, whoa.
Well, I do believe in the spirits are here, and I do believe that there are a lot of people, by chance at a certain circumstance, will see them. I know with this book, and it's a really, really good book, and it's so much in it, there's no way in the world we could cover everything. But you cover every kind of situation, topic, and everything, starting with a lot with Hollywood. You talk about ghosts, where they stayed at, the different hotels where people stayed. I guess the Hollywood Hotel has many.
Oh, the
guests
Roosevelt
from the past.
Hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have stories about Orson Welles, Lon Chaney, George Reeves, Rudolph Valentino, still haunt places. And
Yeah.
one of the interesting ones I thought was Pickfair.
Mary Pickford. Yeah. Yeah. We would kind of expect the old school actors and actresses of the Hollywood heyday to be haunting their mansions that have been lived in now by a lot of different people. But it's even interesting to see that a lot of, more current like pop and rock stars, and I think anybody who's really well known, if they die tragically, if they die too young, if they die under very traumatic circumstances, that you can almost bet you're going to hear some ghost stories about them. And it's fascinating stuff. And it's not to say necessarily that their ghost stories are any more important than, your next door neighbor. But celebrity itself is really fascinating in that we all feel like we know celebrities, and a lot of times we come to love a celebrity so that when they die, there's a sort of a collective trauma. And you will have people reporting, like, for example, Elvis or Marilyn, Abraham Lincoln. You'll have people reporting their ghosts all over the place. Their homes, their favorite restaurants, their grave sites, what have you. And I always thought that was kind of curious. It's like, wow, do ghosts really, on the other side, they really get around? They seem to travel. Elvis was seen in a number of different places, in Palm Springs, in Las Vegas, in his old RCA studio, in Memphis. So are we seeing his actual ghost, or are we collectively creating ghosts of Elvis in the locations that we would expect him to haunt? That's a really good question.
Yes. And
I don't have an answer for that.
Well, it's kind of like a collective tulpa, if nothing else.
Yes, yeah. I love that idea because, somebody brought up something really funny about Elvis, and I was saying, well, why do so many people see the same ghost but in different locations? And for all we know, they could be seeing them at the same time, like parallel universes, different timelines, but you're seeing the same person. And this one guy said, well, maybe you're seeing also the ghosts of Elvis impersonators who died because they loved him so much that they embodied him in life. And so in death, they appear still in their Elvis costumes. I thought, now that is really interesting. I never thought about that.
I never thought of that either, but it makes total sense.
Yep.
Well,
there's Marilyn Monroe impersonators as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Marilyn died under, and it appears like Marilyn died under very tragic circumstances, obviously. Elvis died of a drug overdose. Buddy Holly died in a plane crash. And it seems like if a celebrity, well, even if they die peacefully, there will still be people that will report their ghosts, but it seems like it's much more widespread if there was some kind of tragedy related to their death. Michael Jackson, Jimi Hendrix, and Jim Morrison. And so anybody, who, like Abraham Lincoln is a great example of a historical ghost, a celebrity still, that died tragically, was assassinated. And his ghost is seen all over the White House by so many people, especially people that have stayed in the Lincoln bedroom, outside of the White House, at the theater that he was assassinated at. And so, yeah, you have to wonder, is that the actual ghost, or are we creating it? Because another thing that I've always questioned is we are told a lot of times that ghosts they refuse to cross over. They don't want to go to the light. They don't want to let go of this world. But then I have to think that after several decades, they have to want peace. They would eventually cross over, and then we wouldn't see their ghost anymore. So to me, that kind of indicates that there's a lot more going on than just, oh, we're seeing the essence of a dead person or the spirit of a dead person. They haven't crossed over yet. So I kind of think there's just as there are a lot of different kinds of UFO sightings, I think there's a lot of different kinds of ghost sightings.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you want to filter out things more, that, through our own processes here, that if somebody reports the sighting of the ghost of Elvis, say, that you would tend to dismiss it more than it's the ghost of the gas station attendant on the corner of a town that you've never been to that you're seeing.
Yeah. And that's a sort of a weird dichotomy, I guess is the right word, where more people see ghosts of celebrities, but more people shun when you say you saw the ghost of a celebrity. They tell you, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, make up your mind. But, celebrities, and they don't have to be movie stars. I mean, when I say celebrity, basically, believe it or not, there are a lot of ghosts of serial killers. And I include them with the word celebrity just because celebrity is someone who's well known. So if people know your face from the news or from the entertainment industry, movies, television shows, music, and you die, and your ghost, let's just say, let's go to the bare nuts and bolts explanation for a ghost, that it is your spirit. You don't want to cross over yet. You're not ready to let go of this world. Well, it would make sense that quite a few people would recognize you over that gas station attendant that's only known by the few people, in his little community. So that part of it makes sense. But again, what's hard to figure out is, well, how is it that Marilyn is seen at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, and then at this home that she owned, and then here, and then at the grave sites? Why is that ghost going to all these different places? Do they all then exist on the other side? Or are we seeing what we expect to see? If we were to see a ghost, well, I would expect to see Elvis at Graceland. And so people see Elvis's ghost at Graceland. So that's another tough one, is, are we seeing our own expectations being given form, like you said, the tulpa or the thought form?
Could be.
Yeah. All I know, if I see Ghost Charlie Manson, I'm getting out the sage, smudge stick, and the holy water immediately.
That kind of, I don't mind seeing, Mary Pickford or Thelma Todd or some, wonderful old actor or actress, Orson Welles. That I think I could handle. I still don't want to be alone, but seeing some of the more nefarious characters that have died, that people report their ghosts, do they still continue their violence on the other side? Are they still dangerous? Yeah, that's kind of creepy. So yeah, I'll stick with, the nice Lucille Ball.
You not only talk about those, you talk about a lot of famous people who has seen ghosts, but there's one who a singer. He's had records, Battle of New Orleans and North to Alaska, Johnny Horton, and you you had a very interesting story about him.
I didn't even know who he was.
Oh, you
and
didn't?
I was.
Oh, yeah. He was one of my favorites. But
Yeah, I had no idea who he was, and I was looking, doing the research, and I found his story, and I thought it was just so bizarre because he and Houdini have kind of a similar story in that it involves a communication from the dead to the living. So the story of Johnny Horton is that he was killed by a drunk driver, and I'll have to kind of step back a little bit. Okay, so Johnny Horton, for those of you that don't know, country music legend, he himself had an interest in ghosts in the spirit world. He met with a medium all the time, Bernard Ricks, and according to one of his biographies, he had a secret code that he made with a good friend of his, Merle Kilgore, another great singer-songwriter. So when he died, he was going to send Merle some kind of communication that he would recognize. So 1 week later, he was killed by a drunk driver. He was on his way to a show in Texas. And it was quite a while after that Merle Kilgore was actually on a radio show with Bob Lockwood, who is a famous radio announcer. He introduced him on the air. He played Ring of Fire, which Kilgore had written for Johnny Cash. During the song, a woman called into the radio show, and she said that she was part of a group of psychics that had been together at a sort of a seance the night before, and they had gotten the name Merle Kilgore on their Ouija board. Okay? Well, apparently there was a message that came along with it, and the message to Merle was, the drummer is a rummer and he can't hold the beat. And immediately Merle Kilgore just was shell-shocked because that was the secret code that Johnny Horton said he would know that it was from him. So kind of creepy. And Houdini had a similar situation where he left a communication for his wife. So here's the thing. So I was always hoping that when my dad passed away, excuse me, because he was a scientist, that he would find a way, Dad, find a way to communicate with me so I will know, And I never got anything, nothing. And that always kind of freaked me out because my dad, of all people, would have wanted to figure out, okay, I'm going to do this. And she's going to know for sure it's me. So, it makes you wonder, again, is it me? Do I physiologically block things? Or am I not a sensitive enough person in terms of what I feel and what I perceive? We hear about mediums and psychics and sensitives, and that word speaks volumes. Well, because there are people who are sensitive to this stuff much more than others.
It's just like he didn't get the message from Johnny. Johnny sent a message to those who could receive it to pass it on to him.
Yes. And what timing, huh? When he's, the night before he's on a radio show. And it was years later. So you wonder, wow, did it take him that long to get through? But it's creepy.
Now you got
that kind of, but then you wonder, why doesn't that happen to everybody? Why doesn't everybody get a message from? I know a lot of people who, their mother died or their grandmother, and they saw the apparition at the foot of their bed the night they died, or they got some kind of communication, or the next day they smelled the perfume that their mother wore, and then you wonder why it doesn't happen to other people. It's got to be something about us, ourselves, our bodies, our consciousness.
You're just not
what
open
we're
to
sensitive
it.
to.
That's like I can be on investigations with, 2 or 3 different mediums, and they're sitting there saying, all these people are there, and they're communicating with them, and I'm just sitting there looking like, well, do they really see something, or are they just pulling our leg, or what, and I can't get confirmation. I just have to go with what they're telling me.
Yeah, and I'm such a skeptic too, and I'm not the most trusting person in the world, and I would often ask that same question: are these people just all making it up because they want the attention of, oh, you saw the ghost? Oh my God, whoa, 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 whoa. But then there have been a lot of experiments that I know that paranormal groups have done where they've had people see things, but they don't talk to each other. They write down what they saw, and then they can corroborate, the stories so that nobody's tainting the perception of the person next to them.
Right.
And what's really interesting is also in situations where I know it's not super ethical, but unfortunately it's a necessity, I think, for the research, situations where people are told a false story about a building or a location, and then to have so many of them actually claim to have experienced things that have to do with that false story. Is the power of suggestion something that we need to think about researching more? Because it seems to be very strong. And again, I don't want to say these people are making stuff up. They may have suggested themselves into actually seeing what they saw.
Here's another thought. Just like we all have talents on this side of the veil, so to speak. Some people are great musicians, some people are great basketball players, etc. Is it a talent maybe on the other side to be able to manifest and communicate with the living?
I think maybe on both sides, and I've always kind of felt that too. We can all sing, but we can't all sing well. And I think if some people have the ability to perceive the paranormal or even psychic abilities, that means we all do, because generally we all have the same body parts and brain parts and brain chemicals and what have you. But maybe it's the quantity or the ratio of, this hormone to that, little tweaks that make us just a little bit different from the person standing next to us, so that they're a much better singer than we are. And it is a gift. I absolutely think it is. It's not a gift everybody has, but possibly it's a gift that everybody could strengthen if they wanted to. Maybe practice. Or maybe you have to be born with it.
Yeah. It's hard to say. I mean, it's difficult to... there are enhancements too. Some people are born with bad eyesight and we give them glasses.
Right.
And maybe there are ways to augment that communication factor as well. Certainly those people in the early parapsychology days, the altered states of consciousness, experimented with things along those lines.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think, people that call themselves psychics and mediums, they're the gifted ones. And they're usually the first ones that'll say, well, you have the same gift. It's just, a little more dormant in most people. Like, we're not all good at math. We're all capable of doing math, but we're not all really good at it.
Yeah, I found out I don't have enough toes.
I was like, what? Oh, now I get it. Yep. I have to use a calculator.
So when you're writing books on the hauntings, especially notorious characters, do you think that the type of hauntings, say between sightings of a celebrity versus the sighting of, say, mass murderers, serial killers, the types of hauntings are different? Or are people just reporting seeing the presence of them?
I think when it comes to the feeling behind that people get, the vibe, if you will, I think that there is a big difference between seeing the ghost of Elvis, which would probably make you feel excited and maybe happy, and seeing the ghost of a serial killer, which, a lot of people would report feeling a repulsion, a negative, almost foreboding sense of like evil or negative energy. It's energy that we're dealing with. So some of those experiences are going to be more positive than others. And seeing a celebrity that you loved, to me, would be more positive. And seeing somebody like Manson would be very repulsive.
Get out the sage and holy water.
Yeah.
But is it, are you reporting only those people who actually saw apparitions, or the feelings as well?
So most of these are cases where people see the apparition, because to me, I think like when you're dealing with a celebrity, if you just get a feeling that something's there, you really can't identify it as the celebrity. It could be anybody, it could be their butler. So, for known entities, for known celebrities or historical figures, definitely the apparition or some, a ghost that's somehow identifiable is mainly what I include in here. But then in the rest of the book, there's, stories of haunted locations where people have everything from apparitions to strong negative feelings, to literally being pushed away, to urban legends, cryptids, what have you. So that just sort of runs the whole range of things. But the celebrity ghost is always going to be identifiable.
Isn't there the audio as well? The Roosevelt Hotel, there's a haunting of people supposedly hearing trumpet playing.
Trumpet playing.
Or saxophone, I can't remember.
Yeah. Which one is it? I think it's saxophone.
Saxophone.
Yeah, well, auditory. So, we have EVP, which is electronic voice phenomena, and that's one of the ways that we sort of pick up on auditory ghosts. People sometimes will be walking through a building, they'll hear a name or their name, or they'll hear talking, laughing, singing, music playing. I love in the movie The Shining, because that is something that I've read a lot in a lot of different reports, where people in some of the old hotels that are alleged to be haunted, in the ballrooms, they'll hear music playing. And there's nobody there. They'll hear laughing and glasses tinkering like people are having a party. And they open, there's nobody there. So it's like, not only is can a visual apparition be imprinted on a location, but sound, smells. People smell something cooking in the kitchen of a hotel or a haunted restaurant. There's nobody there. Nobody's cooking anything. But they smell maybe a signature meal that the chef that died might have made. People that report, their grandmother made them cinnamon spice cookies when they were little. And sometimes just out of nowhere, they'll smell the strong odor of cinnamon spice cookies. And there's nobody's making any cookies. So a lot of our senses can be engaged in, and even touch, feeling a scarf sort of running across your skin, or a soft touch. Some people are scratched. It's not always nice. So all of our senses are engaging in this phenomenon too.
Now, you're kind of talking a lot. We'll kind of slow it down a little bit, and we'll talk some so you can rest a little bit there.
Yeah, my voice is starting to fade here.
I marked a place on here when you was talking a minute ago. You'd said something about Charles Manson, and there was another voice that came over. I even heard it, and somebody already sent me a message saying that there was another voice that came over. And it was real quick. Don't know what was said. I'll have to check it when I go back and look at the tape and everything, the recording. But something did come over, so we'll find out what it was. And
so everybody get out the smudge stick and holy water.
No kidding, right?
Now, this book, and I'm again really like it. It is chock filled with all kinds of places, hotels, you name it, trains, ships, lighthouses, anything you can think of where someplace might be haunted or there might be spirits. And she has got stuff in here in this book all over the place about it. I thought it was really fascinating, and you also have stories of different people. Lady Gaga, Sting, Hillary Clinton, Keanu Reeves, and Dan Aykroyd all have seen ghosts. So you've got all that in the book. You've got homes that are in the book. You got one that I kind of liked where Ozzie and Harriet's home is haunted.
Well, I mean, a lot of the celebrities would buy the homes of other celebrities that had passed on, and they came equipped with ghosts. And even today, Miley Cyrus and people like that, Demi Lovato, they're buying these big mansions in Hollywood and old Hollywood and LA that were previously owned by 3, 4, 5 owners, some of which, were famous old-time movie stars who had passed on. So you kind of figure they're going to see something. It's a lot different than, buying a new home that was just built that nobody died in, unless you buy it and it's sitting on top of a Indian burial ground. Then right. You're in a little bit of trouble.
There ain't enough sage, huh?
I'm half joking there,
Now, you talk also about haunted houses and hotels.
Yeah.
There is, a ton of stuff in this book. And you won't sit down and read it in one night. So, but it is very interesting.
And I had to leave out quite a bit. Honestly, I think there could be several volumes because I really seriously had to leave so much out. And then also people that bought the book, they'd email me or message me and say, "Oh, haven't you heard of this place?" I thought, oh my gosh, that could go in the next one. So there's a lot more than this out there. There's a lot of haunted places out there.
Oh yeah, Marie, if you haven't already researched the Brookdale Lodge, that's in San Jose, California. You really should.
Yeah.
Because that's a place that not only mobsters hung out, but Marilyn Monroe, Frank Sinatra, the Hollywood crowd would come up to get away, so to speak.
Yeah, there was another place that Frank Sinatra owned, and of course the name just drew a blank. I think it was outside of Palm Springs, where there was a lot of mob activity that had occurred, and I had, sadly had to pick and choose what I could include with the page limitations that I had. And everybody that I talked to gives me 5, 6, 7 more stories of places that they know of. And, even urban legends in their town that are fascinating. And there could be a whole book just on that part, on the urban legends.
Yeah, there's been a couple places that I've investigated that was really, really haunted. And unfortunately, I was only one of them. I did maybe 3 or 4 times, and then the people stopped having us come. And one place I did only one time, and situation happened where the people who was living there no longer lived there, and the person who really owned the house sold it. So I haven't been able to go back there. But both of those were really, really active. And you talk about haunted houses and hotels. There's one in Lebanon, which is, 25 miles from me, maybe a little bit further, but not much. It's called the Golden Lamb Inn, which is the oldest hotel restaurant that's still in operation today. It was a stagecoach stop.
That's got a lot of history.
Yes. And the way they have it fixed, and I think there's been about 9 presidents that stayed in that hotel, and all kinds of other famous people. And when you go up to the rooms, they'll have a plaque beside the room listing who stayed in that particular room. And if there's no people staying in that room, the door will be open with a rope across it, so you can actually see inside the room. But if the door's shut, that means somebody's in there and you can't see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there was I think it was on the second or third floor. All the way at the end of the hall, the door was open, and it was President Taft's room that he stayed in. And there wasn't anybody around. I had my recorder, and I just asked President Taft, "Are you here?" In a few seconds, you get a, "Yeah." So I thought that was pretty interesting. And
it makes you wonder, is every old historical building, or is every abandoned hospital or asylum haunted? Are there some that just plain aren't?
Well,
and it seems like they all have a story to tell. But also, like, I try to avoid houses because, to me, haunted houses have been written about. There's not a whole lot new I could add to that. And usually with haunted houses, it's a past owner or somebody that was killed there. But these other locations where you might have multiple ghosts and a lot of death has occurred in prisons and asylums, battlefields, what have you. But then there's other ones that you never hear about. You never hear a word about certain battlefields or historical sites that, I've never heard a report on. But then there are others that are like hotbeds of activity. So that's kind of a curious thing, too.
Well, I think that a lot of the places that you haven't probably heard too much of is people that's actually went there to investigate hasn't said anything. And probably a lot of those places are closed, so you can't go out on the battlefield at night.
Yeah, yeah.
And things like that.
Some of these a lot of these haunted places have tours.
Right.
It's like they want to encourage you to come and have an experience.
Oh, yeah. Well, now, you had one place. It was called the House of Moving Mannequins. I'd never heard of this place, but the story behind it is really interesting.
Okay, I'm going to have to find it because I have so much in here that I forgot what I wrote about.
I'll see if I can help you find it here.
Yeah, it seems to be that mannequins and dolls seem to be the creepiest, have really high the creep factor.
Yeah, this one I think now I'm remembering that there were mannequins out on the front porch that were always sort of in a different position. I'm vaguely remembering it. And that's one of the problems of writing a book like this is that it's like, oh my God, that happened? So yeah, if you find it, let me know and I'll read it. But yeah, I remember that part of it. I hate dolls. I hate puppets. I hate mannequins. I hate ventriloquist dummies. I hate clowns. But seriously, any haunted location that involves a doll or something is really sick. But I think in this case that you're talking about, the neighbors and the residents of the area thought that it was just some strange person who was moving the heads around and kind of putting them in different positions. And there's a place here where I live. It's to the east of me, in a very small town. There's a road where there's a fence, and all along the fence, some crazy woman, this as legend has it, urban legend, has tied doll parts, doll heads, doll bodies, for just like a big stretch of the road, and nobody really knows why. So there's a big urban legend that's been created around that too. She could just be nuts, but...
Well, that's possible.
Well, and I think with ghosts, they're pretty cut and dry. What I love about the urban legends is that urban legends often involve ghosts like the lady in white that are seen all over the world. And they have a different name in every country or every region of the world. But the story behind that ghost is very similar, in that she's walking along the road, maybe even hitchhiking. And then when the car approaches, she vanishes. Or she's walking along a waterway like a lake or a creek, crying. And so you hear that, the lady in white, you hear that legend everywhere. And we have one here where I live in San Diego, in an area called the Elfin Forest. And I actually drove out there many, many moons ago when I had first come to San Diego, alone, like an idiot. And I had the creepiest encounter where it was perfectly dry and sunny out. I was driving through the woods. At the time, it was a dirt road. Now, today, it's built up with a lot of houses. But my car suddenly just stalled out and it started pouring. And it was raining so hard that the road in front of me was flooding. I couldn't get my car to move. The wheels were spinning. I was like stuck in the mud, pouring. And I have this awful foreboding feeling that something is coming towards me. And I'm thinking it must be the lady in white. Oh my God, I need to get out of here. I don't think she's very nice. Something bad's going to happen. So finally, don't ask me how, but I got my car turned around, hightailed it out of there. And as I pulled out of the woods, realized it's perfectly sunny and there isn't a cloud in the sky. And my car is the only wet car on the road. So that legend, that lady of white here, is persisted over decades. This was a few decades ago that people still claim that they see her roaming through that part of the Elfin Forest. Sometimes she's weeping. There's something, the lady in white urban legends, either she lost a child, her lover jilted her, or died, something tragic. But just fascinating that they see the lady in white in different countries too.
That's kind of like one of the types of stories. There's always a lady in white or a lady in blue or black or different things.
And a lot of times the clothing is the same all over the world. It's like some kind of a gossamer white gown. It's not like in one place she's wearing jeans and a t-shirt. It's always a very specific type of clothing.
So I want to ask again, if anybody listening tonight has any questions, feel free to private chat them to either H. Foister or Ceiling Cat, and we will get those answered. And if you're listening from somewhere around the world and have a question, you can send an email to the paranormalview@gmail.com. And Barbara, you got a question?
Oh, a lot of them. And that is, the whole idea of dolls. And, that could be a whole book in itself, I think, is it's interesting. In Reiki, you taught that you have to cleanse if you're using a teddy bear or a doll as a remote healing tool, that you have to cleanse it every now and then because spirits might become attached to it because you're pouring energy, you're focusing attention on the doll, then it becomes a likable source.
Right.
That spirit is doing that. It kind of makes you wonder with these people that have doll collections, if they're doting over them, and just how many of the little critters are actually haunted.
Well, and also that kind of goes back to the imprint energy. So if a doll, is owned by someone who loves the doll, it could be a child who dies tragically. Does the spirit of the child, sort of imprint itself on what remains behind a favorite doll, a favorite toy? And, you'll hear about even pieces of furniture that people had. Michael Jackson apparently owned a haunted cabinet that was owned by Liberace that he claimed embodied the ghost of Liberace. So, I guess it doesn't have to be a doll. It can be an armoire or
true.
a cabinet.
It kind of makes you wonder if J.K. Rowling had it right with the Horcrux thing, in that, you can imprint part of yourself onto different objects, and it kind of makes you wonder things like Robert the Doll, for example, whether he's kind of the Horcrux of Eugene, who was the owner.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because it'd be hard to imagine an inanimate object taking on a persona, or it seems to me that it always is going to be an imprint left, residual energy left behind from one of the owners.
Like the resonance theory that you were talking about with Holmes.
Yeah, I just don't see an inanimate object being able to sort of manifest that kind of behavior. It seems to me it would have to come from somewhere else. And, dolls, well, the Annabelle, and I know there's a number of different haunted doll stories, but it seems to me that there was always a very distinct story behind each one, and how the owner or someone involved with the doll died tragically, or there were, murders that happened around the doll, or what have you. I don't know. Maybe inanimate objects can turn on us. Now, that would really be creepy. I don't know if I even want to think about that.
But I know one. They had a movie about it. Some little, I don't know, foreign type doll, island type doll, who had a little sword kind of thing, or big knife.
With Karen Black.
Yeah,
there
with Karen Black. That come to life.
I remember that. And Stephen King had a movie where a car, and then he had another one with a truck, came to life and tried to kill people. So I could be wrong.
You never know. But you're absolutely right that, and I wonder if the mindset of the people involved with tragedy, sailors who are drowned at sea, for example, or prisoners who were in the electric chair or died in prison, because there is that folklore: if you die at sea, your spirit stays at sea. If you die in prison, your spirit stays there. Or even minors, for example, whether they feel that they're doomed to be there.
Well, and that's another thing. So if you die at sea, your spirit stays at sea. But why is it that, like going back to the ghost of Elvis or Marilyn Monroe, that on land, their ghosts are seen all different parts of the country? In the studio in Memphis or in Nashville, back at, Burger King in Hollywood or whatever. So I think maybe the imprinted energy, the imprint ghosts, that I think would apply to. The more sentient ghosts, they seem like they can move around, get around, they can go where they want. But that brings up another question. Why would you choose to hang out in places that hurt you, negative places? If I died, I would want to go to places that make me feel good. I'd want to be around people that, my son, I want to see how he's doing. And also, why are so many ghosts seen in cemeteries and graveyards? That's not where they died.
Right.
Are they just unable to let go of their bodies? Is there something going on with that? And what happens if they're cremated? Do we still see them, floating around where all the ashes are spread?
But then that would, from that conjecture, Disneyland, Universal Studios would be really, really haunted.
Yeah.
I think that some who maybe died tragically in a certain place, they might be attached to that stigma, and they either don't know they're dead, or they don't know that they can move on. And it's like a tape redo. They probably don't even notice anybody else who's living that comes around.
Right. They're not aware. They're more of the imprint where they have no idea that they're being observed, and they just are kind of going through their motions over and over again.
Right.
Yeah. Because again, where do a lot of people die? Well, they die in hospitals, but the only haunted hospitals that I ever really come across are the ones that are abandoned. So, maybe there probably could be a whole book on people that work in hospitals that see ghosts, because that's where you would think that you would see them the moment that they slip from life to death, and the monitor stopped beeping. And I could be dead wrong on this. I'm just not aware of them, but I would think that you would have a lot of reports from nurses and doctors and hospital orderlies and staff that hospitals are just crawling with activity. But I don't think I've heard very much about that. You always hear about hospitals like Linda Vista Hospital here in Southern California that are abandoned.
I don't know, because
it's true, and you don't see them in the morgues, and you don't see them. I go to cemeteries all the time taking photos. Yeah, I take cemetery photos all the time, and I have yet to catch anything.
Really?
Nothing. Not even an orb.
There's so many people that insist that those are really the hotbeds of activity, and that's always kind of bothered me, because cemeteries, they're hauntingly beautiful places, but they're also, they're very sad. If I were a ghost, a spirit, and I had the ability to move, I wasn't in an imprint, if I were sentient in some way, I would not be there.
There was a time when cemeteries were areas where you would go to have a picnic, and you would have a picnic around the grave, and it was more of a gathering area for people. So at one time they were more areas of joy, not always just sorrow.
I think pop culture has had a lot to do with how we view all of this too. Movies and horror movies and haunted house movies, and because I know in other cultures death is treated so much differently, and communicating with the other side it's almost such a natural thing. They don't even think twice about it.
Yeah. Pop culture. Your next book should be on Ouija boards and why a piece of board could be a portal to wherever.
I had one as a kid. We had Hasbro, not Hasbro, Parker Brothers? Parker Brothers. Okay, so my sister, my brother, and I, we had one. And we used to play with that thing all the time. We even had this light-up owl that we would put in the middle of the room, and our friends would come over and we would do seances. Then we'd go in the bathroom and do the Bloody Mary thing in the mirror. And nothing ever happened. I feel like now I must have been provoking the demons, and they just didn't want to deal with me. I don't know. But, we played, those were it was like a board game.
Oh, yeah.
It was like Monopoly.
But again, Hollywood,
Because I know when Parker Brothers made the Ouija board, it really was meant to be a parlor game. And it was only later that, somebody came up with the brilliant idea of trying to reach their dead Uncle Joe, and then the reputation just grew from there.
It's amazing just how, again, pop culture picks up on that. And it's only been the last couple of years where you get these demonic entities, what I think it's called Zozo or something like that. I can't remember. And, demonic activity associated with the Ouija board, etc. When before it used to be just a dating thing. I mean, I remember seeing in the newspapers from the 60s, they would have it on the lap between a date and that's what you would do for fun.
Yeah. It's definitely gotten a bad reputation. But it's also helped Parker Brothers sell an awful lot of Ouija boards, so you have to wonder if they didn't instigate that somehow.
Some of it, yes, makes you kind of wonder.
A good publicity stunt that kind of got out of control.
Yeah, I've yet to find a haunted voice recorder that used on an investigation.
You've never had EVP?
Well, not that. Then it doesn't haunt the recorder afterwards.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I never thought of that. Yeah, it's like it speaks through it once and then it's gone. But the Ouija board would suggest that is a vessel or channel it's sort of imprinted upon.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Have you ever had EVP that you felt was like really convincing?
Yeah, and that would have been from the USS Hornet.
Really?
And in the berthing section, we were in there, and I had the recorder going, and it was just trying to see if there was anybody around there. Nothing on film. Like I said, I yet to catch anything with a camera, but you could very distinctly hear a voice say, "Can you hear me?"
Oh my gosh!
So it was very obvious that something was there.
Yeah.
And that was it was in the birthing section, not in the surgery area or anything along those lines. So it was just where people were normally there to sleep.
Huh, that's interesting. I've heard a few names or one or two words, never like a full sentence. But I've also heard a lot. I've also, been present for some EVP sessions where people said, "Oh, did you hear that? Did you hear it?" And I didn't hear anything. And I also noticed that what they would do is that they would say, "It said da-da-da," and then somebody else would say, "Oh, yeah, it did." And I always felt like that was like kind of leading the witness in a way. Because, it's like we look for patterns. Our brains love patterns. So if somebody says, "Well, I heard, did you hear da-da-da?" We're going to latch on to that. But when nobody said anything and you heard something, to me that, that felt like, it's a little more convincing to me.
Mm-hmm. And to me, if you like a photograph or an EVP, if you have to circle it, or if you have to tell somebody what it says, then it's not evidence.
Yes, I believe.
And I've seen a lot of that.
I've
seen a lot of the red circles around things.
Around just blackness. I had somebody insist that they had captured a ghost on their cell phone, and it was just a black screen. And they're saying, "No, it's there." And I said, "I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it. Maybe it's just me."
Oh.
Well, and that's kind of the problem with technology that is so readily available. Anybody can pick up a high definition camera now, and anyone can drag out their cell phone with a camera on it and start taking photos. But if you don't understand photography, you're liable to get things like just simply artifacts that really are nothing. And for some of us who take pictures, it's like do-over time.
Yeah.
But they insist that it's demonic or it's ghost activity when it really isn't.
Well, and you think too, with everybody having a camera, that we would be getting much higher quality photos and videos, not just of ghostly activity, but UFOs, cryptids, what have you. And it still doesn't seem like we're quite doing that. I mean, I think we get a little more, but we also get a lot of people just photographing anything that they think could be something, and they're not looking at the scientific explanations or the common sense explanations that, they're automatically just labeling it as a ghost or what have you. And so it's like we have more ability now to get things on camera, but now we have to weed through so much more junk to find the good stuff.
Okay, I think what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Let Marie rest. When we come back, if you're still feeling bad and you want to go, that's fine. But we'll let you rest for a minute, and we'll go ahead and take a quick little break. I mean, it's a great show. Everybody's just loving it. So I guess I'll let Barbara take us out on break. And remember, you won't hear anything while we're on break. But your mic will be live, so don't say anything. Else mute it.
I better not say anything bad.
All right, Barbara.
Or let the ghost talk. Everybody, you're listening to the You're listening to the Paranormal View here on the ParaX Radio Network. We want to thank everybody for joining us tonight with our very special guest, Marie D. Jones, and we will be right back after a few messages.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making ParaX part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, ParaX.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for being here with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. And Barbara, I don't think that we took a look at where we have listeners at tonight.
Tonight they're in the United States, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and our little unknown friend is back.
All right. I like our little unknown friend. Keeps us guessing. Tonight I want to welcome back Marie D. Jones. Excuse me. Had a little frog in my throat. And we're going to see how she's feeling. I know she's been sick, and I want to thank her for the time that she has allotted to us. So are you with us, Marie?
I am here, but I will say I think my voice is on the verge of collapse.
Okay. Well, we understand.
So we probably should wrap it up.
That's fine. But
I will definitely come back and we can do another round.
That's always good to have you come back. So
yeah, there's plenty more that we can definitely talk about.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
And like I said, I do thank you for what time you were on. It kind of slipped away from me and went further than what we thought. So, but do appreciate it. And as soon as we get this show posted, we'll send you links to it and everything.
Thank you. And I absolutely would love to come back and we can get into some of the more unusual hauntings and things.
Yeah.
When I have more voice to work with.
Sounds like a winner. Want to thank you again. So you take it easy. Go take some medicine and rest.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Okay. She's always a great guest to have, and I'm telling you, this is one of the better
always
books.
A lot of topics.
Yeah, this is one of the better books. I mean, we never even covered a portion of the stuff that she has in this book. You'll have to get it to read it. I mean, there's castles and places all around the world, not just here in the United States. She has places listed everywhere. I didn't even really know that there was a really Frankenstein castle and the history behind it, which was really interesting the way she had it. I mean, it was built. Let's see if I've got it wrote down in here. I'm pretty sure that I did. It was built in 948 BCE. And I mean, that's how old that place was. And there was really a Frankenstein. And the things that he was doing, the people didn't like, so they stormed the castle one day, killed him, and tore the castle down. So,
yeah.
So just a hole is there.
Mm-hmm. What I love about Marie's books is that they're extremely well researched.
Yes.
And she does not put a lot of conjecture in there, and a lot of it is strictly fact. And it's wonderful to be able to pick up somebody's book and not having to second guess where they got their information from. She is extremely good. I think. Henry, you still there?
Yeah. Moofy just sent me a message,
Oh,
and
okay.
she said that she's been to that castle many times, which would be interesting. And we'll have to hear from her and see what all she has to say about that castle. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how the writers of that time picked very historical characters and twisted them. Frankenstein, Dracula, that were all based on real characters, and just turned into these lovely twisted horror stories. I like it. It's fun.
Yes. Let me see if I've got some other places in here where.
Wait, I know that you have a story in there, Henry.
Yes. As a matter of
Let's
fact,
talk about that. Yeah.
Well, I think everybody's heard pretty much all the ones that I've had in here. Let me see if I can find them real quick. And it wasn't just me. She had put out a request from a lot of people if they had stories, places that they've been to, and had evidence to tell her story, and she would put it in the book, and she did. I think I got 3 stories in it. Yeah, I've got a little section on the Waverly Hill Sanatorium, Hillview Manor, the David Stewart Farm, and the Bell Nursing Home. The Bell Nursing Home's no longer there. You can't investigate there anymore. But that's
It's no longer there, or it's just not available anymore.
Well, I don't know if they've tore it down. I know that the fire department had bought it, and they're going to make it a fire station now. So whether the building itself is still there or not, I don't know. But they did buy the place. And that's as much as I know about it. So, yeah. So if you buy this book, you'll get to see 4 stories that I've wrote, little short stories. I didn't go into a whole lot like some of the other people who goes into the history of all the places. I didn't really do that. I just kind of said some of the things that actually happened when I was at those places, and pretty interesting. So you'll have to get that. They've got lighthouses, a whole bunch of different lighthouses. They got haunted ships. She's got stuff in here I'd never heard of. The Morro Castle ship, which was in 1934. I think I forget how many people died on that ship. I believe it was 200 and, let's see, 25% of 549 on board died, which was 137 passengers and crew members. But I mean, she has researched this to where there is a lot of great stuff in here. Some guy has a whole bunch of places in here that he put in about Denver, haunted places in Denver. Some people wrote about Gettysburg. And she had a big article in here about the Skinwalker Ranch. That was very, very interesting.
Ghosts and aliens.
Oh, yeah. And she told the history about everything there and what goes on. She talks about Point Pleasant and the Mothman. She has the stories on all that. She's got one on here called the Borderlands, which is a place in Colorado that area is supposed to be really haunted. And she has a office memorandum in here. It's supposed to be from the government. Of course, some of the stuff was blacked out. But an investigator for the Air Force stated that they had recovered 3 saucer-shaped discs, roughly 50 feet in diameter. And each one had 3 bodies in it. that was maybe 3 foot tall, each one. So they supposedly it's supposed to be real.
In Colorado?
That was, I believe, let's see, this is part of a 1950 memo filed by FBI Special Agent Guy Hoddle about the UFO sightings in Aztec, New Mexico.
Okay.
He describes the 3 UFOs about 50 feet in diameter that had been recovered, each containing 3 aliens. And we had somebody on the show who wrote a book about the Aztec crash.
Yeah, the Aztec UFO incident.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And we had them on the show, which was very interesting. They researched that book very well also. She talks about the Bridgewater Triangle, all kinds of stuff there. Yosemite National Park. And she talks,
You mean Yosemite?
yeah, Yosemite. And my glasses ain't working right now. And she talks about the Alaska Triangle.
Not familiar with that one.
Yeah. I hadn't even heard of that one either. There's a place in Southern California in Orange County known as the Black Star Canyon. Have you heard of that?
No.
Interesting stories in that. Terrors of Turnbull Canyon. All these are in California. It's in Puente Hills.
That's Southern California. Yeah.
She had, of course, the mountains and stuff that's haunted up toward Northern California. She had a place talking about poltergeists. She had one, I guess, one in Scotland called the Suchi poltergeist, San Diego poltergeist, the Macomb poltergeist. And I guess somebody researched these places and the people about the poltergeist. So whether they are, really real or not, or I couldn't say because I've never seen one. Have you ever seen one, Barbara?
Poltergeist?
Yeah,
No.
well, I mean,
That's pretty rare.
yeah, that's what I thought too. So,
I mean, I don't know if what the definition they're using is, if it's just moving objects or removing objects, but I've never seen either. Like I said, I think it's relatively rare.
now,
An actual ghost apparition is rare enough as it is.
do you think that subconsciously people can do things like that, not realize that they're causing those things to happen?
Oh yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, because there's telekinetics everywhere. I mean, there's Russian tapes of their telekinesis projects, and probably the U.S. has them too. But we don't release any of that stuff. So yeah, I'm sure that there are people that can do that, and probably can. I don't buy into the whole "it's the 13-year-old girls" theory, but I think anybody can become a telekinetic.
You think anybody can?
Yeah.
I think you got to be able to use certain senses, and I'm not so
Well,
sure.
I mean, studying martial arts, and you watch videos of Taoist priests and martial artists, and the amount of energy or the chi that they can produce. They can pick up sticks that we could not pick up. Their strength level is high, and I think that they can project energy when they strike. So yeah, I think people could become telekinetic.
So you think they can bend spoons and forks like that?
Anybody can bend a spoon. You just grab both ends and twist.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know.
I meant without
Yeah,
touching.
the question in the chat, no, I don't think anybody can see a poltergeist. I think it is just the activity that they see. I don't think they've ever seen a ghost pick up an object and actually hurl it.
Yeah, they'd probably only see the object itself
Yeah.
move. Which I don't even
Kind
think
of
I've
weird.
seen anything like that.
Oh, I don't think anybody has. The only thing I remember seeing on film is from the second season of Ghost Hunters in the Armory, where the sound guy's equipment box lifted up and hit him in the face. And that's the only time I think I've ever seen anything on film um, related to that.
Yeah. No, there is so many. I didn't realize that there was all these different types of places, and a lot of them. Well, I won't say they're real close to me, but there's a lot here in Ohio that I didn't realize, and that if I wanted to actually spend the time to travel and go look, I could probably find some of them.
Well, now that you're retired, Henry.
Just because I'm retired doesn't mean I can do anything. Oh, but let's see. She talks about a lot of stuff around Hollywood. She talks about haunted theaters that are there. She talks about cemeteries like the Forever Cemetery and who haunts them. She talks about the Hollywood sign, the story on that. Let's see, a whole bunch of different hotels that are haunted around Hollywood. And she tells the different spirits and stuff that the people see and the ones that are actually haunting the place. Studios, Charlie Chaplin Studios, Stage 28, that's haunted. Culver Studios, Paramount Picture Studio, all those are haunted, and she goes in detail of telling who's supposed to be haunting them and some of the things that happens in those locations. Let's see, the Hollywood Hotel has many ghosts from the past. Let's see, she talks about Orson Welles, Lon Chaney, George Reeves, the ones that died, and the places where they lived or where they worked. People, I guess, sees and hears things all the time from those different people. Rudolph Valentino, he haunts 2 or 3 different places, supposedly. Then she talks about John Lennon, Liberace, Buddy Holly, and those types of stories. And she lists, because I was saying earlier about Lady Gaga, Sting, Hillary Clinton, Keanu Reeves, and Dan Aykroyd. She goes in and tells the stories of each one of those of the things that they've seen. So that's really interesting. I don't know if she...
Yeah. It's amazing how many celebrities actually have admitted that they've seen ghosts, and not all of them lived in celebrity houses, but she's absolutely right. The majority of celebrities buy other celebrity houses.
Yes,
They
they
go
do.
to in LA anyway.
But they also cost a lot of money.
That's true, yeah.
And I'm not paying a lot of money just for a ghost.
No, thank you.
Which is really interesting. She talks about the story, I guess the area or the set where this happened at is supposed to be haunted. And she talks about the story with Vic Morrow, who he was filming a movie, and he ended up...
The Twilight Zone movie, yeah.
Yeah, he ended up getting killed, and I guess the 2 kids that he had there got killed too. They was filming with a helicopter.
Yeah, that was very tragic.
Mm-hmm. And so she talks about that and different things. She talks about the serial killers and their ghosts, and she goes into great detail of from how things started with them the killings and how all that stuff took place, and then what happened and where they're haunting at. She talks about Ted Bundy. I guess it's Herb Baumeister and Dahmer and Jack Utweger. Have you ever heard of him?
I don't recall ever that one.
Yeah, well, like I say, then there's lots of interesting stuff still that you haven't heard. Yeah, no, this is an excellent little book, and I recommend it to anybody. So hopefully we'll see about getting Barbara a book. How's that sound?
I'm going to have to get one, yes.
Yeah. So you always get them on Kindle, though, don't you?
Normally, yeah. Save a Tree. But like I said, there's some books that you just can't read on a Kindle.
Oh, well, true. Well, this
because there's some things that, you know, the pages are shrinked.
Oh, yeah.
And you just cannot see photographs very well. It gets kind of grainy. So there's some books that you have to get as books.
Well, this book has like 368 pages. So it's a fairly good size book, but very, very entertaining, very interesting. So we're down to like 4 minutes. So you got something you want to talk about, or tell people?
No, it's actually been pretty quiet, the paranormal. And, you know, we're coming up on October, which is the Halloween month.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see how many other stories come out and what's
have,
happening in the paranormal field.
I have 2 investigations next month, and Mark sent me a message earlier today and was telling me that he's been contacted from a bar coffee shop in Cincinnati that they want somebody to come down and investigate. My first question was, at 2:00 in the morning? Because we can't do it till after they close. And I said, that's probably not a good area.
Yeah, but think of it this way. There's coffee on site.
Well, I would hope so. So he's getting more information to let me know. And if I end up doing something like that, I'm riding down with him. So,
good idea.
Yes. I'm not going to try to drive the streets in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
No way. I don't like.
But that's a lot of investigations for 1 month, though.
Well, he doesn't have a date set on that one. But the other 2 is, one's Preble County and the other one is going back over here to Middletown. And we did get quite a bit of stuff from there. And we didn't do a full investigation last time I was there. So hopefully we'll really get a bunch of stuff on that.
Is there going to be the Halloween stroll again this year? I don't remember what town you go to for that.
Oh, no, that is in Dayton, and they either already had it or it's not until next year. I wasn't invited this time. Of course, I haven't been invited the last couple of years, but I've been in contact with some of them, so hopefully I can, you know, kind of like get into it maybe next year and go to a location. I want to go to because they go through all these houses that people have set up, and they tell the ghost stories. The people comes to the outside, and the people who owns the home comes out on the porch and tells the story. But the last house that they go to, they always have the people come in, and it's on the tour, and they get free hot cocoa and some kind of snacks or something. And hopefully I would like to be in that last home and be able to do my show and talk to some of the people who's been on the tour and see what they think. Which would be interesting.
Yeah. See if anybody's seen anything. It'd be nice.
Yep. Yep. All right, we're down
the house
to
is beautiful. Yeah.
just about time to go. And I do want to thank everybody for listening tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. And we will, I guess, be back here next week, hopefully, if everything goes okay. and then we will. I will let you know who's going to be on. So during the week, I'll post it, and everybody will be able to know then. So with that, I guess it's just about time that we wrap up. And I want to tell everybody this is Henry Foister.
And Barbara Duncan.
And we will see you next week at the same time. So good night, everybody. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal View.